Hey everybody, good morning. Staying cool out there. It is a hot one, just like it was yesterday and the day before. My name is Brett House. I am the co-founder and co-host of Signal and Noise, which is a data tech and AI podcast and media company, as well as the CEO of a go-to-market consulting services company for the tech and AI space called High Signals. I'm joined by Jacqueline Baker, the global general manager, right, of consumer, right, for Apply, and Dr. Ali Akhafaji, I got that right,
Yep.
right, the CEO of Apply and the former CEO of Credera, which I just learned. And just a little interesting fact is my partner at Signal and Noise, Rio Longacre, is currently at Credera. He's only been there for 6 to 8 months, so you guys didn't cross paths. But today's topic is the end of the agency as we know it. I couldn't help but think of I hope I'm not aging myself, that little band called REM from Athens, Georgia, that had an album called Document. And I think the theme of that kind of resonated with me as I was standing in the shower thinking this morning, the end of the agency or the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. And I think one of the common themes that we've been talking about both on our podcast and articles that we've written, and then with clients that we're dealing with, and we talked about this ahead of time, is that agencies are going to be fine, although there is some debate around the managed services model versus the product-led model. But one of my colleagues says agencies, and this is going to be maybe slightly controversial, like cockroaches, they're going to adapt. They're going to adapt no matter what happens. And so I think there's a lot of interesting topics around both organizational change, right, and talent change within agencies, as well as tech stack and tech change. But I think the way to get started here is I wouldn't, and Ali, I'll start with you, is that I wouldn't define, or we wouldn't define your organization as an independent agency. How would you define what you're calling ACX? Right? How would you define what Apply is doing in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So Apply, we're a CX partner to some of the biggest brands in the world, and over the last 18 months, there was a distinction that's been made around the type of customer experience that we deliver. And what we started to really focus on is changing the way we deliver these experiences from static and manual content, data, marketing, commerce solutions to agentic workflows that are more dynamic, that are more at scale in a way that we couldn't have done that 5-10 years ago. So for us, we really recognize now that there's this new segment. It's called Agentic Customer Experience, short ACX, where agencies like us are working with clients to deliver some really bespoke, highly scalable solutions that leverage agentic models and deliver them on the other side agentically. So a lot of our work involves humans working very closely with agents. In collaboration, we leverage specific methodologies that get that done. So for us, those two sides of that coin gives us what we call this new segment, ACX.
Yeah, and how would you define customer experience, right? Because CX has certain connotations, right? If you go way back to the beginning of the internet, it was your experience when you arrive at a website, an e-commerce website, from sort of beginning to end, that entire consumer journey or flow. How would you define, and how do you, as Apply, but just in general, customer experience and how that's delivered to both B2B and B2C clients?
It's almost like you read our report. So we came up with we came out with a report basically detailing what this new segment means for us, for our people, for our clients, for the industry. And we're under no impression we're the only ones doing this, but we wanted to articulate very well. And customer experience is something that has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. At first it was just digital websites, and then we had mobile, and then we had social, and now there is this agent-led experience that we also have to worry about, because if you want your brand to be recognized in a chatbot or an agent that millions and millions of people use, it's no longer just about the user experience. So there's a distinct new experience that you have to deliver to your clients, because those clients now have audiences that are just beyond someone visiting a website or
Yeah.
someone looking at a social page.
Which ties into sort of the discoverability issue and how you manufacture that from a brand perspective, right?
Right, and like to add to that, I think at its core, the core basic tenet of CX as a discipline is that from a consumer lens, the last best experience you had is now your expectation for every experience going forward. The world that consumers live in now are vast ecosystems of their own creation. So you used to be able to focus on CX from an brand owned ecosystem perspective. Then you layered on third party retail ecosystems as they expanded. But now you have consumers live all over the place. And
Yeah.
how does your brand show up and deliver impactful experiences that are going to resonate with consumers everywhere that they are, where they basically live in bespoke ecosystems. But we now have the technology and the capability to deliver on that promise.
Yeah, and what do you mean by bespoke ecosystems? Define that. I mean, just in terms of each individual consumer
Yeah.
is having a unique both device, channel, even LLM experience, right?
Exactly.
Even though there's only a certain number of the foundational models available to the general public, but is that what you mean
Yes,
by sort of a
exactly.
bespoke experience?
Exactly.
We're coming to a brand or a product or a service from very different angles, and I think discoverability, to your point about the LLMs and how brands have to set themselves up. It's not just SEO nowadays, and AEO and GEO are often misunderstood and sort of hyped up. But it's the primary discoverability of your product documentation, of all this stuff that you need to now make visible and open, right, to the agentic crawlers, so that when people do searches. We've been talking to pharma reps or pharma executives at the show in the Hearst House. So we're doing the podcast at the Hearst House, and a lot of them talk about even doctor discoverability of pharmaceutical brands has completely changed from sort of event in real life experiences. That's still there, but also to like, hey, they're actually using LLMs that are retrofit for their particular category. But yeah, so how do you guys help brands prepare for that sort of complexity of being found and being discovered and being taken through a path to some sort of conversion?
Yeah, I mean, our thesis is right now things like AEO and GEO are focused on how to make your web presence discoverable in agents or in chatbots. But I think that's a band-aid, because ultimately you're going to have to build a new channel, and that is an agent-led channel, which is how do we make sure that our content, our experience is consumed much more optimally by agents, not just to convey what's on the web, but having an entire new channel for your brand that is agent-led.
Yep.
And make sure that that in itself is a living ecosystem. Now, on the other side of things, I don't think we'll ever abandon the web experience, the end customer experience. It's never going to be all agents, because
Yep.
at the end of the day, there is an element of emotional connection that we build with brands when we look at a website that is beautifully designed and reflects the brand's ethos and energy. You can't really do that in an agentic experience. Agentic experiences are going to be markup. They're going to be, for all intents and purposes, look like code. So that's what agents are going to consume better. So I think there's always going to be that duality where we have to service as brands, we have to service both of these channels equally to make sure that we're discoverable, but we also make sure we connect with our users.
Yeah. So let's talk about the transformation that agencies are going through from sort of two angles, which we talked about ahead of time. The first angle being sort of organizational transformation, talent transformation, right? There's a lot of talk, a lot of hype around. And Dario is not doing a good job maybe of PR around this when he's saying, the entire white-collar work ecosystem is going to be radically disrupted, right? It's going to change, but doesn't necessarily mean mass layoffs. So I think there's an organizational change dynamic within agencies, and then I think there's a technical change dynamic. They're largely moving towards being more product, or as you would say, solutions-oriented organizations powered with agentic stacks, with common data infrastructure, right, versus a bunch of point solutions that are being delivered through a managed services model. So let's start with the organizational play. Let's talk with you, right? What are the key, Jacqueline? What are the key things that agencies need to think about when it comes to how they adapt their customer facing people, account managers and salespeople.
I think domain expertise becomes absolutely critical, and so you don't need as many people to do as many jobs, but so those people that you do have to have deep expertise that they can have those conversations with clients, understand their challenges, start to formulate a solution, bring that back to to the team, and be able to do that work, and so. There's no more room for generalists. I think practitioner leaders and subject matter experts will be the ones that will move this forward. And so there will be less jobs because a lot of things can be automated. That generalist stuff can be automated. What can't be automated is deep expertise.
Yeah. So let's define domain expertise, right? I think it's industry category expertise. You're sort of involved in
and that's
that
the
on
lens I
PPC
take
side.
it from. Yeah, so I think there's technical domain expertise, and then there's like category level understanding of certain businesses, certain verticals.
And then I think there's one other dimension, functional expertise, right? And so I manage a lot of independent agency accounts, and these are kind of tech-forward independents. And they say that oftentimes there's a breakdown both in functional knowledge, right, in terms of we understand the CMO and their daily workflows and daily work streams across channels, across different functions within the marketing organization, and how they work day to day so that we can then come up with solutions that solve their key problems. So oftentimes there's a misunderstanding there. And then there's also maybe a misunderstanding of the industry category itself. And how do you customize what are kind of general CMO challenges to the industry category? So how do if you don't have the domain expertise, how do you expect let's say a classic account manager that's an agent, that's a kind of a relationship walk the halls manager? If they don't have the domain expertise, that's a problem.
Very much. So that's a short runway.
That's a short runway. And now add on top
But
of
it
that,
should be.
Add on top of that technical expertise. So how do you get them to know enough to be dangerous? And I'll just give one example to elaborate what this means. Is that if your account team is bringing in, there's two. Like I'm working with an agency that has 700 employees, they're 500 million revenue, and they're about 15 different countries, and they have 3 people that go into 90% of all of their meetings. Because the first technical questions that is asked, the commercial teams just throw up their arms. They don't know what to do, and they don't know how to answer it. And so how do you overcome that, you think, organizationally, to get people to kind of bridge these two gaps?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is the mastery of one's craft, really regardless of your role. If you have a mastery of your craft, that means you can leverage AI and bend it to your will versus be replaced by it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, because a person with a mastery of their craft, powered by AI, that's a force multiplier.
It is.
And you bring that to the table, we go back to the topic, the end of agencies as we know it. That's not how the majority of agencies have been built over the last 15, 20 years.
Yep.
I mean, historically, agencies were about the creative genius and the craft knowledge and the way to do this on a bespoke boutique level. And then along the way, we decided to make that a mass, factory building massive amount of body.
Yeah, a human capital-based model,
it just
right?
became
a billable hours, human capital-based model.
And you lost that connection with your craft, with the customer, but there was the volume, and the volume provided the revenue. What I believe at this stage, what our thesis at Apply is that era is over. The rise and the way Jacqueline put it earlier, the renaissance of the boutique, the regional,
the
independent.
And why do you think they have a distinct advantage? Why do you think independents have a distinct advantage? Is it because they lack the baggage, the FTE baggage?
They lack the organizational baggage,
the business model challenges.
In terms of 10,000 people sitting, offshore that have been just billing T&M to clients, or the plethora of complex organizational structure and workflows. So while the very large agencies...
The matrix.
Exactly.
Right?
So while the very large agencies will spend the next 5 years just trying to survive, they will be basically, not to sound heartless about it, shedding a lot of their weight just to survive. Smaller organizations, bespoke agencies will thrive because they'll be able to leverage the tools that are present now in AI and really superpower their people and deliver some incredible value to their clients. It is the ultimate.
They're going to be much more nimble, and they can do the same with 20 people that a team
ultimate-
that has 200 ordinarily did.
It's the ultimate democratizer of size.
Yeah.
So AI allows you to compete on a level that you were never able to do before.
Yeah,
I
and
think-
it's a democratizer of subject matter expertise, I think.
I would disagree about that.
Okay.
Subject matter expertise is something that's what we call the mastery of your craft.
Yeah.
Someone like Jacqueline and her expertise in consumer, retail, and CPG, you can't buy that with an agent.
Yeah,
that is
that's true.
something, walking into a client and speaking with a CMO of a retailer and telling them about this is the problem and this was the evolution over the last 25 years and now what we're like, that is not something an agent can do for
Yeah,
you.
that takes reps and client reps. You're hearing their day-to-day problems. Maybe on the technical side, there's a bit more democratization. And if you're curious enough and just start opening the door to Claude Code or whatever.
So clearly, we didn't coordinate on this before. No, I disagree. I think subject matter expertise on all levels will be more appreciated because as AI grows and gets smarter, it will take from the bottom of every person's job stack, which is the more mundane, the more automated things, and then subject matter expertise, which sits at the top, the higher order, higher thinking, complex reasoning. Those things will require a human being who has that domain expertise.
No, and I think I'm in agreement there. I mean, because I think that the longer you are in your career, which is a challenge for people just entering the workforce, the more sort of strategic systems thinking you employ. And so if you start to get dangerous with Claude Code or otherwise, you're able to build stuff and act almost as a conductor to compound your own value or your team's value.
Study after study has shown that AI in the hands of an expert is a force multiplier. AI in the hands of someone who doesn't know their job, it is sometimes a hindrance to their success.
Yeah, so subject matter expertise takes time, it takes experience, it takes reps, right? So now let's just and that transformation has to happen within the agency world, and we're all in agreement that if you don't have domain expertise and you don't have some level of technical expertise just to be good enough to be dangerous, that those are the people where the jobs are going to be at risk, right?
But I think it's just about the whole model changing. So I won't say which agency because it doesn't matter. And I wouldn't want to sell them out. But earlier this week, I met someone I didn't know before at one of the events, and I asked where they work, and they told me, and I said, "Oh, I'm not familiar. What do you do?" And it's a smaller boutique agency. But their answer was, "We do everything." And so I said, "So you do nothing?" And they
Everything
said,
is nothing at
and
all.
they said, basically, yeah. And I was like, because if you're trying to service every vertical and thinking that you can do all of the things, you're not. Being everything to everyone is nothing to
Well, and
no
I
one
think,
at this point.
yeah.
Which is why I love that Apply has taken a clear vision and a clear bet on certain verticals, certain capability, certain solutions, and saying, like, this is what we do, and we're the best at it, and we're going to be the best at it, and we're not going to try to be mediocre to everybody, but instead we're going to be the best at what we do.
Yeah, and kudos to you, Ali. I mean, ACX to me is a classic example, and we had a conversation for 5 minutes ahead of time of category design. And if you define a category, Benioff did this with Salesforce. He defined the CRM category, and then he just went straight ahead in trying to win and dominate that category. You have to win in that. Otherwise, you sound kind of like everyone else in the ecosystem, saying we've got an agentic stack, we've got workflows, blah blah blah. What does that really mean? Like to the feet on the ground.
And to be clear, this is the culmination of years of work that apply. This is not something that we stepped into.
Yeah.
And even the ACX itself and the direction, this is where our team is already at. So articulating that was the easiest thing in the world because we're already living it.
Yeah.
And for us, it is so important. The very old saying, "Know thyself." It is so important to have an identity.
Yeah.
And to make sure that you are aware of it and you push those limits, because clients then at that point know that you are the expert. Because if you do everything, then you're replaceable. If you do everything, that means you're an expert at nothing, and then at that point you're replaceable even by agents.
Yeah.
But then if you walk in and say, like we do at Apply, we are consumer experts, we are entertainment, sports, and media experts. We work on agentic solutions. We build them in for content, marketing, commerce, data solutions, leveraging our biggest partners like Google. It changes the dialogue because now you picked a lane and you say, we're the best at this lane.
Yep.
And, kudos to everybody else who does everything, but this is where we play.
Yeah, and that's another kind of domain expertise play. And the person that you're speaking to, I mean, my gosh, that's your best elevator pitch for Cannes. I mean, that's slightly ridiculous. But let's go.
Yeah, there's no elevators here.
We do everything. Like that's a winning statement. So tech transformation. So we talked about organizational transformation, tech transformation. So as I was mentioning, a lot of the clients that I service are the independent agencies that are replatforming, right? And they're building what was really a point solution oriented organization, highly siloed. Point solutions live in multiple areas, whether it's measurement or activation or creative or media analytics. And now I'm seeing a trend of independence. So one of my clients has actually brought in their first chief product officer, and I'm tasked with helping to transform the organization, not into a product-led organization, because you said you're going to fall flat on your face if you try to do that, but some sort of in between the managed services model and the sort of solution selling, consultative selling model, which is generally associated with SaaS. But what do you think that looks like going forward, Ali, and what would you suggest?
This is the distinction we talked about, right? We are a service company. We provide consumer solutions, entertainment solutions to our clients. We're not a product company. And historically, when service companies try to become product companies, they fall flat, right? Like that is not a pivot you want to make. But there is a value in being able to build solutions that clients can leverage in efforts to get them to where they need to be.
Yep.
And those are domain-specific solutions. They're built based on our understanding of the industry and the common problems that a lot of our clients are faced.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's not a product. We don't license it. We don't send it out would now become SaaS. This is not the objective. And I think that fine line is often people have a really hard time walking it. And
Yeah.
I've worked at agencies, very large ones, and I've built operating models and operating systems, and it is definitely restrictive. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen that in your experience, right?
Very much, and that's what I think is so interesting, and why I do feel passionate, like on this topic of like end of agency as we know it, not end of agency in totality,
Yeah.
but as we know it. And absolutely, I feel fine. We're decades-long agency veterans, and went to do this because we believe that much that this
Yeah.
is the future, right? And so we drink our own Kool-Aid, we're bought into this and determined to kind of lead this path and
Yeah.
this new agentic transformation.
It's truly, there's a lot of talk about inside-out thinking from product organizations versus outside-in thinking, right? The classic product organization talks about their features and capabilities and 75-page slide decks, right? With really no hint of understanding of the client value they're delivering. Where you're making a distinction with solutions. You're saying this is specifically aligned to client value. And we talked about this before, and I'd love you, Ali, to talk about. There's been a collapse in sort of product life cycles and in development life cycles with agentic, coding example, which helps make this possible. Like we're seeing a pattern. I saw an example with Saudi Airlines, where the client that I manage, the independent agency, didn't have a specific airlines. They were trying to optimize their routes, basically. To the highest level of should we cancel certain routes? Should we redirect other routes, right, to ensure that they've got butts and seats? And they had a lot of dashboards and a lot of analytics, but not real actionable intelligence. And they went to the agency, the chief product officer. It's Incubita, by the way. And he was like, well, we don't have specifically that solution built for the airline industry, but it's a common problem. And we've got this sort of predictive analytics capability to build this in hours. And so he said, I'm going to go away for lunch. And they met up like 3 hours later. And he basically had set his models running. And it came back with basically a bespoke solution completely tailored to the problem solving that client needed. And the client's jaw just hit the ground.
Yeah, but I do want to caution because having that mentality, because it's so easy to build applications on a whim, because you don't need to have the technical background, you don't need a team with project managers and delivery people and product leads and strategists and people with domain expertise, and now you can sit on your Cloud Code and build whatever you want. We are on the precipice of having this graveyard of applications that have been built on whims without really thinking through the business needs, without thinking through the strategic roadmap of that product. And this isn't like an industry problem. This is a world problem. Everyone is doing it. And
Yep.
this is why, token maxing is the new thing. But it used to be much more thoughtful. So we always advise that, yes, as you compress the delivery timeline, you still have to be thoughtful. You still have to be purposeful in the solutions that you built, just so you're not building it because you can. You're building it because you need to. And I think that is a very, very different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the execution is by far more accelerated now, which is great, but the strategic upfront can't be diminished.
It's even
Yeah.
more important now.
Yeah, even more.
The
important.
strategic upfront is even more important because of the ability to deliver solutions. So what are your recommendations for? We've talked about organizational change. We've talked about tech stack change and agencies not truly becoming product organizations. So what do you think that new model looks like?
Yeah, I mean, this is the same thing we tell our customers. This is not a technology problem because everybody has access to the same models, has access to the same agents, has access to all the same technology. This is a training, enablement, and governance problem.
Yep.
And coming from a technologist, it pains me to say this, but it's definitely not a technology problem because having the right training enablement for your team, making sure that your team is not just trained but empowered on these solutions, both agencies and brands alike. And then for governance, we are approaching very, very quickly a challenger moment because we're all seeing the risk, but no one is really doing anything about it because AI is so cool and it does so much. But one day, one brand is going to do something pretty dumb, and the rest of us will stop in our tracks and say, okay, maybe we do need to have the right governance around this.
Yeah.
So
And is that a call for some sort of regulatory intervention?
no,
at
no,
the
it has
government
to be
level, or
self-regulated as an organization, as a brand. You have to be clear about your values. You have to be clear about the way that your team has to use the technology to be able to not create something over lunch and call it, production. And to me, you can never have enough rules to do this. This is a principle-based culture that you need to develop.
And you expect this to happen on a company by company level, or does it have to happen at an industry level? And then where is the enforceability of any level of governance when there's profit motive?
Success and failure will enforce that for you.
Yeah.
I think you'll be much more successful if you have the right training, enablement, and governance around this model to be able to grow and have a lot of success as an agency or a brand. And I think that will be the new blueprint. Unfortunately, we're only heading in that direction. There's no one already there. No one in the world is already there.
Yeah.
So there isn't a blueprint we can all look to and say, well, this is how I need to do it.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of just creating our own
Yeah.
blueprint as we
I
go
think
along.
On the client customer side, it's a workflow challenge too. They have these tools, they have these capabilities. They're not getting adopted or being used in any meaningful way because they haven't changed the way they work.
Yeah.
So it becomes the companies have invested in all of these tools, and the general population in that building is using it to read their emails. And great, and
Yeah.
great. Sure, that made you more productive, or build a PowerPoint deck for you. Great. Nobody wants to do that anymore anyway, so awesome. But that's not the real power of it. But it's not getting adopted properly because the workflows aren't being changed. And so the
Yeah.
work mentality has to change
Yeah. And
by being enabled by the technology. Not technology isn't going to do it for you. You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to do it
And
organizationally.
honestly, this is where we've seen AI fail versus succeed. The most typical project right now with AI is an organization, an agency or brand. They take their existing workflow and they layer AI on top.
Yeah.
And they get their 20, 30% savings and they celebrate it. The problem is 20, 30% savings is not enough to pay for the investment to get you there, the investment to use it, the operating costs of that
Yeah.
with all the token costs and the usage costs.
Yep.
What we always advise brands, and I think the agencies can approach this the same way, is you try and identify where do you need to get to, and then reimagine how you can get there with AI.
Yeah.
Because that 20, 30% is now 20, 30x. which
Yeah.
means everything else, all the other cost is basically negligible.
Yeah, this is not an efficiency play, right? And this is a transformation of how brands go to market. And they can't use an old model that's just going to amplify something that really doesn't adapt to this kind of new world order. We're out of time. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ali. And